language that is offensive or inappropriate pursuant to Board Policy KFA. And we have a couple of folks who want to address the board. We will start with Mr. Clint Augustin regarding the override.
Yes, Clint Augustin, 37168 West Leonessa Avenue, Maricopa. And I wanted to discuss the override because at the last board meeting when I was here to talk about something else, the challenge was sort of put out there that if the public is interested in supporting the schools, that we should come forward if we're interested in another override. And I put some thought into that comment because I take a little bit of an issue with if we vote down an override, then we are somehow not supporting education. Because when we go into the ballot box, our choice is yes, we agree to either 15% for 7 years or whatever else, or no, we don't agree to that percentage. Unfortunately, we can't go in and say, well, how about 4%, or how about 2%, or how about we go for less of a term? And so I wanted to encourage the board and also offer my assistance that I would like to see us go for something that's much less than 7% or 15% and much less than 7 years. I'd love to see us do like a 3% for 3 years, 4% for 4 years. I do know that normally they've been 7 years, and it's been a challenge to find out how you make them shorter. And I know that in talking to Mr. Roush, that he's been chasing that down, but it does look like a possibility. I also wanted to say that I think that we should be careful about saying we need the override increase simply to give current staff raises. It's a noble thing, and I realize that our staff isn't getting paid really probably what they're worth. I know they haven't had raises in several years, but when so many in our community, including my own household, we are not making the same as we were making 4 years ago. We're making less, and we have different employers. It's a challenge for me, and I think for the community, when we try to say it's for staff raises. So I would propose that we do 3 for 3 or 4 for 4, and that we do it for improving education. My understanding is a 3 or 4% rate increase would allow the district to get somewhere between $900 and $1.1 million, which is enough to fund about 18 teaching positions. I know that we've cut back a lot in art, in PE, in music, in librarians. And if we were to go to the public and say, listen, we want to bring some of these things back. We'd like to make sure that we're providing everything that people can get at some of our competing schools and districts, and even more. That people would definitely walk in, particularly with the smaller amount, and say, we do support education, and this is a logical idea. I would suggest, too, that the board ask the public to come in and kind of give their inputs. I encourage those who would be against it, no matter what, to come and see what we can do to change their minds. Because I've talked to a few people, several people over the last week, and I've found only one who said no matter what, I wouldn't support it. And I've probably talked to 8 or 10 who have said if it made sense and that was what it was for, I'm pretty sure I would do it. And so that's most of what I have to say. Again, I offer I'll be here if you have meetings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Liz Zimpelman.
Okay, I'm Liz Zimpelman, 43411 West Wild Horse Trail. And I'm reading a letter on behalf of Steve McMullen, who's not here tonight. I shortened it, so it's, if you need the full version, I know that Mr. Irving and Patty had the full version. While my wife and I won't be able to attend the board meeting on Wednesday due to our vacation in New Jersey, we felt it was really important that I wrote a letter to you to express our concern and displeasure in learning that once again the full-day kindergarten program is coming up for review and possible vote by the school board. This year it strikes an especially strong nerve as our oldest child is about to enter kindergarten. As of today, he is going to start his education with MUSD, but this debate is putting that decision in limbo. We're less than 6 weeks from the start of kindergarten for our son, and we, like most Maricopa families, have mapped out a plan for managing the schedules and care of our children. Primarily, we want our son to have a full academic day kindergarten. That is not negotiable for us. He is ready for it, and we want him to continue to build on the foundation that he has from his preschool program. To possibly make a change to half-day kindergarten now is unfair, to put it mildly. Had we known in January that half-day kindergarten was a plan for MUSD, we would have enrolled him elsewhere. Now that most parents have made their decision and alternate schools are at capacity, this appears like nothing short of a bait and switch. During the course of this discussion, the idea of tuition-based full-day kindergarten program will most certainly arise. We oppose this idea for a variety of reasons. We know that a tuition-based education will not be a reality for many of our students in our district. Therefore, the idea that full-day tuition kindergarten will be all academic is unreasonable. That would mean that families who can afford the tuition would have kids that are half of the school year ahead of those who can't afford it. Legacy Charter School has already realized this issue, which is the reason that their full-day tuition-based kindergarten is non-academic. You cannot let the students who can afford tuition move ahead of those who cannot, creating a line between the have and the have-nots. The idea of scholarships will also come up. If we have the money for that, let's fund the actual program. Lastly, my child and I believe strongly in a well-rounded education. We believe that the arts and athletics are very important, but academics should be the primary component of any education. To put kindergartners into a tuition-based model sends a horrible message when you continue to fund high school athletics, arts, and culinary programs in full. To make a decision that is equivalent of pay for education before you move to pay to play for your sports or other non-academic programs sends me the message I feared about the school system, that improving this system academically is not the commitment of this board. When the school district creates situations such as this, the relationship with the community is absolutely destroyed. Most parents in this district have known where their children would be attending school since March. It is absolutely unfair to these parents to change the plan with only a month before the biggest day in their child's life so far. This will almost certainly create a backlash within the community. I just ask that you give this decision the consideration it deserves. Comparing us to Coolidge or Casa Grande is not what we should be looking at. The majority of students who don't go to Maricopa do not choose those districts. We lose hundreds of kids to Kyrene every day, so compare us with them. They will be providing full-day kindergarten with transportation to and from every Maricopa kid's door. With the state laws regarding literacy by the close of 3rd grade changing, the value of full kindergarten is even more vital. Let's not sacrifice our children's academic progress when addressing a budget concern. I ask that you find the savings you need in the non-academic areas that the Budget Committee recommended. Please do not disseminate a program that is working so well for so many of our young students. If you show the community that there is a commitment to academics, we'll continue to show our commitment to the Maricopa schools. Thank you, Steve McMullen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lorna Howley.
Hello, Lorna Hawley. I live at 32585 West Trading Post Road, and I'm also here to speak about kindergarten. I decided to come in tonight because I support the all-day kindergarten. I was thrilled about the results my son had with Mrs. Miller at Santa Cruz in the 2010-2011 school year, and my daughter is entering kindergarten this fall. I also want to speak to the timing of this discussion because I've been looking at the agendas expecting to see this discussion since April, but now it's 5 weeks before the start of the school year, and now even a decision isn't tonight. I don't believe it's a discussion tonight. So that'll be less than 5 weeks if it's changed to half day. And luckily I'm a stay-at-home parent, so the change scheduling-wise wouldn't be a terrible situation for me, but I can imagine the panic of working parents to find last-minute care and having to change their work schedules at this late hour. If Maricopa wants to move to half-day, I think the discussion should be held earlier so parents can make a school choice when enrollment is still available at schools like Pathway or, and honestly I don't know, but Kyrene, if they're open, I'm not sure, but I know Pathway gets pretty full toward this time of year. So That's it. I just really support the full day, and my son is in the first class, I believe, that's going to be tested and required at 3rd grade to pass. And I'm really grateful he had the opportunity to take the full day kinder, because I think it really pushed him to be more academically ready for 1st grade than a half-day program would have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Halley.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to address the board? Superintendent, summary of current events. Dr. Conley?
Good evening, Dr. Conley, Maricopa Unified School District Deputy Superintendent. Good evening, President Bartle, Vice President Anderson, and members of the board. Current events, I think the most talked about current event is our new superintendent coming in on Monday, and we're all very excited to welcome him into our district. We have had many people on vacation, as you see, throughout our boardroom, and so I would just like to express our appreciation again for having the time to rejuvenate, and we look forward to the next school year.
Thank you very much. Governing board member activity reports. We have at least one item, and that is to formally recognize Dr. Conley, our Deputy Superintendent, and congratulate her on her being selected as an emerging leader by the ASCD, which is the leading international nonprofit education leadership association. And the Emerging Leaders Program recognizes and prepares young, promising educators to influence education programs, policy, and practice on both the local and national levels. It's a 2-year program for which Dr. Conley was selected, and the organization's executive director and CEO said, quote, Ember joins a passionate group of educators from around the world dedicated to improving their skills to support the success of each learner, and I look forward to working with her. So, Dr. Conley, congratulations, and thank you for representing MUSD on the national level. Any other member reports? No. Moving right along. Information items and work study. Dr. Conley.
Well, I, like you, am getting used to our paperless system, so I'm hoping that your patience with me will go a long ways tonight. Okay, so the very first one is the report on the override election schedule, and I am going to defer, hopefully, to Mr. Roush. Do you have any information to share with us?
Only you have the schedule, and we have to follow the Pinell County schedule, and last day that the board may adopt the resolution is August 8th.
Any additional questions or comments regarding this item? I know we talked about this at our last meeting as well. Ms. Burnett?
I guess I do have a question. I really appreciate what you mentioned earlier, Mr.
Augustine.
Augustine.
Augustine, yeah.
Okay. Is there a way that we can do something like that and present something? You know, you mentioned something about making sense, and that really did resonate with me. And I was wondering if there was something we could do to present to the public, to the parents, to everybody out there. If there is something that does make sense, maybe they'd be more willing to go for an override versus not having one at all. Or that's my question to you, Mr. Roush.
Short answer is yes. There's ways to do that. Some districts do phone surveys and other surveys to get information out and gather information back. Yes.
And is there time for that? Good.
I believe there is.
You might consider setting something up, obviously after this week when Dr. Chestnut is on board. I know that this is an issue that he's very, very interested in, and invite Mr. Augustin and any other community members who'd like to be part of that, but at least to have a brainstorming session so that folks can also give their insight to Dr. Chestnut, as he's certainly a bit of an outsider at this stage of the game, and it'd be great to give him some one-on-one feedback. And if we could coordinate
Yes, I
that
think we
prior
could-
to our July meeting, so that we could have some more information as a result of that meeting, that'd be terrific.
I'm sure we could do that. I know even today, Dr. Chestnut sent an email to Clint, so as part of that. So he's thinking about that even today on his drive down.
Any other questions on override? Thank you. Item B?
Item B is the update for the Maricopa Unified School District's Lakes property. I do believe that there was, at our last meeting that we were presented, I presented 3 options that we have before us, and you guys are very aware of those 3 options. And I guess it is now to the point where we need to look further as far as putting it on as an action item to discuss and possibly move forward with that. And I know, Mrs. Anderson, you had some questions as far as, has different municipalities been asked, and yes, and right now the interest is not there.
Did we get confirmation that the process is, as it relates to going to the public, that we ask them for the ability to approve a specific proposal versus asking them to approve the concept of us going out and soliciting information and bids and proposals?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Roush on this one as well. When we talked about it originally, we have to, of course, follow your procedures for going out for bid and going out for any type of product. Mr. Roush, do you want to talk further on that?
As we gave some information, it looks like the best time to go out would be to an electoral question is November during the general election. Costs about $13,000. The specific language, there are a couple of districts that have done that, and we're working with Pinell County to get the exact language that they've used before, because this doesn't come up very often. We'll use our own attorneys to make sure that that's correct. Some of the information I forwarded on for tonight's meeting, you can see that the money cannot go into M&O. That's a law that says cannot go into M&O.
Right. Can you address specifically, if we were to go to the voters, what would we be asking them? We'll be asking them to approve a specific proposal. Entity A wants to pay X dollars for this property, or is it going to the voters and say, hey, would you give us the ability to negotiate with whomever about selling, leasing the property?
The latter.
Okay.
With the specifics on where the money can be receipted. Because if we fall under that 14% rule, then part of it has to go back into the debt service, and then part of it goes to unrestricted capital. If we're above that 14%, it all goes into unrestricted capital. So that language would be on there also, so the voters would know where the money would go.
Okay.
So essentially, we're asking them permission to sell it?
Yes.
Sell or lease, yes.
Okay.
What was the price again to put it on the ballot?
$13,000.
Well, it's about $13,000 in a general election, yeah.
Great. Well, given the frequency with which we've talked about this and all the research you guys have done, I think it'd be prudent to have it as an action item so that we can have a discussion and decide what to do.
Thank you.
Thanks for the update.
Item C is our report on the kindergarten program. In looking at the documents that have been provided, we provided several things for consideration for full-day kindergarten. The history of full-day kindergarten, our student counts May 2011 until May 2012, and that was our total. Our average class sizes, kindergarten through 5th grade, has been included. Our kindergarten sibling report, and what that is the number of siblings, the number of kindergarten students this year and last year that have siblings in our schools in other grades. The enrollment number specifically for kindergarten 2008, 2009, 2009-10, 2010-11, and 2011-12. And again, then looking at just different reports for kindergarten student achievement. And then also a spreadsheet showing what our neighboring school districts and area charter schools are doing for their kindergarten options.
I have a quick question for you, and I'm sure you can answer it pretty quickly. And this is probably a crossover to a budget question, but so if I'm in the wrong place, let me know. The move on when reading mandate was just approved.
Yep.
And so I was very excited that the state has approximately assigned $132 per K through 3rd grade child. Is that money going to be used for the kindergarten, and is it?
It is, and
I mean, it's a big chunk of money for us. It's about $200,000.
It is. It's about $187,000. And when you look at the specifics of the legislation and what Governor Brewer has set aside, it is for additional support for an additional tier of intervention, which means we cannot use it to fund all-day kindergarten. We can use it as a support, but you can't use it specifically to fund all-day kindergarten.
Okay. I mean, because there are districts who are using it as part of their plan that they have to submit by October.
Right.
To help,
help
with the kindergarten.
Right. And you can use it, like you said, K, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. Right. And it really, though, is built in for that additional tier of support. So you have your educator, and then you have the students that are at strategic or at intensive. You do additional direct instruction with them. So it cannot specifically fund. And I'm going to use, for instance, our Title I. It's very similar with how Title I is structured with teachers. If we fund a teacher under Title I, that classroom, for instance, can't have more than 20 students. And there's lots of stipulations when you fund teachers specifically under that.
But if all-day kindergarten is part of our reading progress plan, could it be?
And this is philosophy. When you look at more bang for your buck, that more bang gets for that your support. I'm trying to word this without getting in educational lingo. Could you use it in your plan? You'd have to be really creative in how you worded it.
You guys are creative. I have the utmost faith.
Mr. Irving?
Yeah, I guess my concern with all this, and was already brought up, is the timing. It can't be an action item tonight, right? So therefore, we would be looking at the earliest in a couple of weeks, which means you are within 15 days of telling parents that we have changed a major program. That makes absolutely no sense to me. I understand the budget issues, but the timing to me is just wrong. Let alone getting into the tons of data all over the nation which says if we're going to improve, we've got to build up our foundation, which we've already done. So I guess my concern is the anxiety this is building with teachers and parents and kids over something that we're probably not going to act upon that's going to affect them in 15, 20 days. I just really think we need to put that at rest for those people, clearly bring it up and discuss it, but I'm just really concerned that we leave here tonight with people still feeling my kid might not go to school full-time in 20 days. That's just wrong.
I mean, I don't think that's I think that the sport and the data needs to be put out there as to why we do feel it's important.
And
that's what this item is about.
And again, the supporting documents very clearly shows, you know, what we've done as a district, our success in our early, especially in our elementary levels, and then supporting documents as well.
Yeah, I understand that. My concern is we've had two people speak, and their concern was what's going to happen to their kids. I understand what the discussion's about. My concern is about the anxiety we created. That's all.
And maybe once we go through the budget,
Right.
once we go through that, then maybe some of these can be answered.
Yeah, as long as it is for those people, that's my concern.
Thank you, Dr. Conley.
Welcome.
Any other questions or comments on kindergarten?
Final item for our information work studies is our review of our secondary student handbook. As most of you know, this is a information item only. It doesn't have to be necessarily approved, but we always like to have feedback and responses back. So I am going to open that up if you have questions regarding that.
Oh, I do.
Okay.
First off, I think they did a great job, and I do
Thank
appreciate all the hard work that all the staff put into it, because it's not easy creating a handbook. But some of my concerns, and I have addressed, I've asked the questions, is, you know, one of the things that we say in our vision statement is that we're unified. And what I liked about their handbook is they really clearly described what the dress code should be for the secondary, so that there's no question if a student arrives, what will happen to them, the consequences. But my fear is, you know, when I look at our policy, our student dress policy, and our regulation that we have to go along with it, and our secondary handbook really does follow this, it expands on it. But where does our elementary fit in? I mean, we cannot, if we're going to be unified, we need to be unified across the board with all of our policies. And I understand that in the secondary, you know, especially for the discipline, that can be a little bit different, and that's how you expand on it. We have our basic policy that we follow, and then you expand on it. But I just was curious where we were at with the other part. Is the secondary handbook consistent with the elementary and vice versa, as far as some of these policies that we have in our policy?
Okay, so I'll go through some of the ones that came in question.
Okay.
One was our bullying policy and the consequences for that. So our 6 elementaries are 100% in line with what that bullying policy is, and this year, the consequences for that. We are doing an additional push on that because the majority of our elementaries are part of the character counts, which is, again, an anti-bullying structure for using good character. So that is built in with consequences. I think that's a much bigger discussion as far as how do we get the community involved with what that looks like, and I know that many of you have been involved in those talks, so it is much bigger than that. With the high school, I know that it really, well, with the high school and the middle school, you start getting into specifically your cyberbullying, which is huge with our text messaging and our internet and our social media. And so I do want to recognize that, first of all, Krista Barrett has done an amazing job with the handbook and has really spearheaded this project. And it really, in talking about a unified community, the secondary administrators have become a unified community and worked many hours in having conversations and having that debate back and across. What is the dress code? What really does that look like? What can we enforce? Now, your question with the elementary schools, and this is the gray area, I believe, that, and clarify, I mean, for sure, if I'm not getting to what you're asking, there is a specific dress code that is very different, I'm not going to say very different, but it is different than what our secondary schools look like.
It's a uniform.
It is a uniform base. And there's history behind that. There's a lot of history behind that we would have to put it on as an action item and go forth and really dig deep. The 6 elementary schools are cohesive on that, and they've been pushed this summer to become even more cohesive because we have students that change schools often, and that consistency is 100% crucial. Your question, what's the difference between the elementary and secondary? There is a difference.
I'd
And
like
so
to,
if I'm
I'd like to
you-
see the dress code policy then to be reviewed for
Okay.
all of our levels then at a different meeting, because to me, it needs to be consistent K through 12.
I will put that on.
As a side note, don't hit me. The dress policy for the secondary, I thought was very clearly spelled out. Is our staff going to follow that too? You don't have to answer now.
No, yes.
It was appropriate. I mean, it sounded very appropriate, and I just...
And we all know this, and every administrator knows this as well. We have the dress code, and sometimes what I see is very different than what Ms. Zelaya would see, what Mrs. Barrett would see. And we just have to have those initial conversations and continually following up with our staff of here's our expectations of what we need to see and the culture that we're providing.
It's very clearly spelled out. I'm just being smart aleck, sorry.
And Ms. Zelaya brings up a good point. When we have our initial staff meetings, we review basically our handbook for our staff, and they sign off on that saying that they understand and they've read it. And that does allow us, if that isn't followed, the accountability piece.
I have a question regarding consequences. A bit more philosophical, but the in-school suspension, Saturday school, I think those are terrific. I'm assuming there's a budget element that needs to be included in that because we have to staff that and so forth. My question and concern is the short-term suspension, the out-of-school suspension. I don't know with what frequency that's exercised, and I don't know any of the data behind what happens for the kids that hit that point and move forward. But just intuitively, it seems like the kids who are in that position, the absolute worst thing that they could do is be out of school for 10 days. And that, how can they recover from that? It puts them on the fast track on the wrong path. Is there something that we can do to, even if I can probably justify the increased expense by having a Saturday school and in-school suspension and stuff like that, given the impact on the individual student, but also enrollment and the other kids in the class. But my concern is what can we do to be very strong in our enforcement from a discipline perspective, but not have it be such a detriment to their ability to get an education.
Ms. Zelaya will respond.
Good evening, President Bartle and board members. Everything that's included in that handbook is a list of consequences and options. As we have proceeded through the years, when I started, we had in-school suspension. Last year we had Saturday school. With budget concerns, we've had to not staff some of those things, although we did staff through our site budget the Saturday school. The upside about a couple things. We haven't suspended their education because the kids are able to get that information home when they're suspended for 10 days or 9 days. But I agree with you. It's a district decision to staff in-school suspension, which we felt was a better option because we're in agreement. I think that we can all agree we would rather have them in school than out of school. It really comes down to budget and what we want to staff and what we can afford to do. The Saturday school, the kids, it's been a nice attendance in that they are serving their time, but and it's not taking them out of their day programs. So really it becomes a budgetary decision, and I don't think any of us would disagree with you that putting them out for 9 days in certain circumstances isn't always the best thing, but it does take staffing to keep them in there.
Well, can I make a comment to that, President Bartle? I mean, as a teacher, there are a few students who do need to be removed off campus. in a long-term suspension or short-term suspension. And I know that June is very, because we've looked at it, and I know that you're very careful on who gets assigned that. But aren't you also trying to get the alternative school going so that there is a place for the long-term or short-term suspension students to go and do it online?
Right, and I need to differentiate because the online school is its own high school and an online program, which can also be an alternative program, meaning it's just an alternative method of learning. It's really a blended learning environment as well. When students are long-term suspended, they can have the opportunity to remain enrolled in Maricopa Unified through the online program, and they can do that from home or wherever they are. So for those egregious behaviors that really come down to hearing and so forth, we can offer them the Maricopa online program. I want to be clear in differentiating that the Maricopa online program is not a punitive placement. It is an alternative placement for kids that may be more successful in a blended learning environment. But again, I want to go back to Member Anderson in stating that there are some kids in infractions when we talk about altercations, weapons. There's times when kids need to go home. But I think anytime we can service kids with education rather than just send them home because it is a vacation sometimes, I think we would be happy to address that in an in-school suspension program.
Yeah. As Ms. Celaya knows, having spent a year with this thing, the concern that students and staff had, and I think it's extremely well written, is the equal enforcement of it. And that was always the problem the kids had and the staff had. And, you know, a comment from the kids, Mr. Irving, why worry about it? By Thanksgiving, they'll forget about it. That was true with a few. You know, my concern is, and I know it's a staff training issue, that this or any other policy, especially at the high school, there's got to be in service and staff have got to do it equally. I know you want that, and I've heard all of you preach it, but it's really important because otherwise that's what tends to happen. The kids just figure it'll go away. Yeah, and again, it's just, you know, a concern we've all talked about, but I really hope you stress that in your orientation week, that you hold this, and I know you do, very important and you're serious about it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'd like to, at some point in the not too distant future, do some research on those kids who have fallen in that category, you know, some that have stayed in school, some have got out of school suspension, what's been the difference in their behavior in their grades, and maybe there's some more macro level data on that, and then find out if in fact it's just the budget getting in the way of us improving the education environment for these kids and for the high school students as a whole, then I think the board should have that discussion.
Okay.
And there may be an opportunity for next semester or next year that we could accommodate that in some form or fashion.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Any other questions on the handbook?
Good job.
Thank you. Consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The first item on our action items will be voucher 1254, which I will turn over to Vice President Anderson because it includes a reimbursement item to me, so I'll recuse myself.
I don't know.
Wait, he doesn't leave the room yet.
I don't care. I don't want to reimburse them.
He needs to submit those things in a timely manner.
Okay, voucher 1254, is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
To what?
To approve.
Oh, okay.
Second.
So Patty moved, Leslie second. All those in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, 4, 1 abstention.
Oh, my computer's frozen now.
Item F. No, I'm sorry. Item E, presentation and possible approval of the 2012-2013 proposed budget.
Thank you.
Dr. Conley?
Oops, wrong one.
I do believe that Mr. Roush and Ms. Honeycutt has prepared a presentation for this piece. As we get started on this, as an overview, you have all been part of the process, and it's been a nice, not a nice, I mean, it has been nice, but it's been a learning experience for us all. And I think that each and every year we get a little bit better at this process in Maricopa. Our budget committee put hours in, especially going over information that may or may not have been there before. We had a very well-rounded committee that represented our stakeholders in Maricopa. And then once we brought it from the committee to me, then I was able to bring it to you and start preparing you for what we were seeing as far as potential changes from last year's budget to this year's budget. With that said, I do want to recognize Mr. Roush and Ms. Honeycutt. They have been here many nights, very, very late, trying to get everything ready, and it is their time of year and their crunch time, and so I just would like to recognize their hard work that they've put in.
Thank you.
And I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Roush. And I'm available, of course, to answer as many questions that I possibly can answer.
President Bartle, members of the board, you have the proposed budget, and what I'll go over is a short PowerPoint presentation, and feel free to answer or ask any questions. We always try and increase the proposed budget because we know that our adopted budget can be a little bit smaller, but the proposed budget is what the state goes back to, and we can't go any higher than that. Of course, the increased enrollment will be adjusted in December and then later, so if we have that. So again, this proposed budget will be a little bit higher than the adopted, and probably higher than, unless we have increased enrollment, than the December revised budget. Okay. So with that, on the fronting page, you can see the budget limits. Right now, we have at $29,769,000 for general, $1,471,000 for unrestricted capital, soft capital at $371,000, and federal projects at $4 million. And the budget expenditures, maintenance and operation at $29,769,000. Unrestricted $1,471,000, and soft capital at $371,000. Again, the proposed budget will always be a little higher than the adopted. Changes, and it's most easily to understand. Just to, when you get into $30+ million, there's a lot of detail. But summarizing some of the changes in the federal grants, we know we have about $650,000 more in Title I, so we moved some professional development and our staff over there. Title II, we moved some professional development over there. We think some impact aid may come in. We don't know how much, so we're budgeting for it to come in, but it's not a dire expenditure if it doesn't. So you always budget for it to come in. Impact aid, EduJobs, we know that funding went away, so that was a change. Roughly 9 teachers. Auction grant went away. Roughly 25 teachers, 5 academic coaches, 12 or 13 aides were funded in that. State of Arizona, unrestricted capital. We're going to have to make a large transfer just to balance our budget. And you can do that. You can transfer your unrestricted capital into your maintenance operations budget. Would like to not have to transfer it all, but if we need to, we will. So we're right now tentatively budgeting $1,050,000 soft capital. We don't know that we'll have to move any of that to salaries, but that's potentially a change. Base salary on Fund 11 is $150,000. 301 class size reduction
and we'll talk about that a little bit more in our 301 funds. We'll have some money there to keep teachers. $530,000 will be changed, so roughly 10 or 11 teachers will be able to keep funding it in that fund. Local, the override phase out, we know, $950,000. M&O carry forward, we thought we may have a little bit more, but we're not, so it's going to be about $900,000 less. Unemployment taxes, there's two parts of that. There's the claims that we think will be down, and also just the rates. So we're going to save a little bit of money there, which will help our budget. We know we are going to pick up all the medical cost increase, which I have to say a lot of school districts aren't. That's $165,000. We're going to have a phone system change to a cloud. So hopefully that's going to work. We have to rely on our IT department, Robert. And we had enrollment change of over 200 students from this year to last year, and with the weighted average, it's a little bit $720,000. And we won't know for sure about that because the state really goes in and calculates that like 2 times in the next couple of years, or within the next year. So, and we know our liability insurance went down about $45,000. So, and we are doing really well with our liability insurances. Just want to. So we know total revenues and expenditures change about $1,890,000. Any questions about this slide? Okay. So we have changes about $1,890,000. We have personnel reductions of about $2 million, and it looks like we may have a fund balance, and that is somewhat dependent upon our hirings too, because our HR department, there's a lot of movement. We've got to get it right. Can't overhire, and so it's going to be crucial that they really pay attention to that. So, Fund 301, 3 different parts. This is passed by the voters about 10 years ago, and it's a complicated formula that's based on tax revenues and collections of investments with state properties, and it's been down for a couple years, or more than a couple years with the recession. All tax collections have been down. This year, the formula, our Fund 11, will be about $700,000. Fund 12, $690,000, and Fund 13, $680,000. So, with that, if we go over Fund 11, which is for salary basis, we look like over the next 2 years, we could sustain at least 2% added to the salary schedule. So every salary schedule amount could go up 2% and sustain that for the next 2 years. The state treasurer is coming out on ballot to redo the formula, and when the state treasurer does that, it's we think with the future tax collections that it could be 2% this year, keep it for next year, or even more for next year. It could be another 1 or 2% on top of that, because the formula and the ballot language suggests more money that will go into 301, if that makes sense. So that will be on the general election. Fund 13, again, we're putting more teachers into that fund, so it saves salaries. So, any questions?
Yeah, I do. Just to clarify, so the Fund 11, that has to be voted on?
Fund 11 is in the proposed budget, so it's already in as an expenditure, revenue and expenditure. What we need to do is change our salary exhibits, and we can do that at the next board meeting, and the board adopts the salary exhibits, which you did earlier in April.
Right.
And so that was before the state finalized any of their budget stuff in end of May. So, and then with that, we just want to make sure our contract language is correct, and we'll work with our great attorney here. So.
And just to clarify, because I know I had to ask this question because I don't work in the schools, and I think there is some perception that 301 monies, folks tend to think that that's just the money that they would receive at the end of the year when they get their checks. But this would be the salary schedule, if that changes, then that's going in their paycheck from when they start July 1st to when they're done June 30th.
Right. The very first amount would be a teacher with just regular education. It's roughly $33,000. That would go up 2%, all the way down to the very end, which would be a master's plus how many years experience, that would go up 2%.
And this is just for the teachers?
It's only certified.
It's only certified, so you can only use it for the certified?
That's the law, yeah, unfortunately.
But that will show up in next, the way I'm reading it, this is part of next
That'll be
year's
part of their salary.
Okay.
Okay.
Happy dance?
No, it's not classified, or it's not administrators. It's not classified or not administrators.
Happier teachers make happier administrators, though, right, Ms. Laya?
Summary of the proposed budget. Again, we have a lot of revenue losses, $3.6 million. That would equate to over 70 teachers if we were to equate it to that. Position cuts, we're doing our best not to have very many position cuts. Increase in Title I funds, $650,000, transfer of unrestricted capital, and then Fund 11 has 2%, at least 2% amount, and we'll come with, we'll talk about that with our HR director, Mr. Beckett, and our cabinet level folks to make sure of that amount. So, any questions about the summary? Any questions in general?
I have just.
Okay.
I realize that we've got, we've cut the personnel and that's basically been through resignations. How does this going to affect our numbers in the classrooms? I know that, as a parent of a first grader who was in a class of 32 kids last year, that was even over the cap. So I'm just curious with the reduction, how that's going to affect the classroom.
I think we're going to have to get those numbers, but we really don't have a choice but to balance our budget. So, but
just talk. Oh, but they can't hear you on. But they can't hear you online.
They need to hear you.
When we talk about,
You're still not on.
the information that I had submitted to you in the kindergarten informational item had all the class averages. And as I think that both of you have had children in the highest class sizes in the entire district.
Lucky us.
You have, I know. When we've looked at our staffing for this year compared, when I say this year, I'm already in next year. So when we look at our staffing for our 2012-13, we kept in mind our schools that had higher class sizes, and then the schools that, of course, had lower class sizes, and have already started adjusting the staffing models within each school to make sure that there is the support there to do as much as we can, because as you read, it's an average class size of 25 students, which is really good.
And so our ratios, our cap sizes haven't changed, so we didn't have to adjust those?
No.
Okay.
There might be room on a future board agenda to discuss that model, because when we originally established our staffing model, it's different than what we've actually have in place right now because of our budget cuts. And so that's something that the board needs to go ahead and take a look at, if nothing more than just to have a regulation in there of what that staffing model is.
Okay.
So can we do that?
That would be fantastic. I would love to do that.
I know you don't have enough to do. So.
No, actually, it's very much needed.
It is, just so we can clarify for the community.
And you have it in writing.
That we have great classes.
Yep.
Thank you.
And I have one more question for you. So, and this piggybacks on the one that I'd asked Dr. Conley earlier. So the move on when reading, is that money reflected in what you just showed us?
We put it in the budget
Okay.
as revenue and expenditures. We haven't detailed it out per se. It's just in there as general.
But it is in here.
But it is in there. Okay.
Has to be in there, or else we
Couldn't spend it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No.
Comments? Motions?
Thank you.
I move we accept the proposed budget as submitted.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Roush and Dr. Conley. Item A, personnel schedule. Discuss and possible approval of personnel schedule, which includes resignations and reclassifications, which actually doesn't include reclassifications, terminations, non-renewals, stipends, new position requests, employment ratifications, stipends, leave of absence, FMLA requests, and other administrative actions. Dr. Conley?
We have presented the personnel schedule to you, so I'll entertain any questions you might have regarding that.
Question on number 16 for a new position. That's already allocated out of your high school fund? Oh, sorry.
It's...
Yeah, it's already, that's just part of your, okay.
And just for the clarification for minute purposes, the question you're asking about is the data and assessment project specialist?
Yes.
And then the question would be, is that an additional position or is that already within her staffing model? And that is within, I'm not going to say staffing model, is that within her allocation of her
Excess of her
FTEs?
salary.
And that is already in the allocation, so it's not changing that.
Thank you for translating. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the personnel schedule.
I'll
So-
second.
Motion is seconded by Ms. Coutray. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Reclassification. Ms. Coutray.
I did put it.
No,
I'm sorry.
I
Mrs.
pulled it.
Anderson.
That's me, sorry. I know.
Not this time.
We look so much alike.
It's that tall blonde thing.
Okay, I just have questions on reclassification, and for me personally, I would like to see this portion tabled until Dr. Chestnut is here to advise us on this, and I don't know if that's a completely separate move, or...
And I'm looking puzzled just because I need to clarify what you're asking. The reclassifications for the...
We have five employees,
okay.
44 through 48.
But 46 and 47,
Sorry.
is that something you
I'm
want?
working through my board docs.
It's confusing.
Are you making a motion to table?
Yes.
I second the motion.
Discussion. Would like to hear why you guys want to table this item, or these 5 employees reclassifications?
Well, I just want to table it as a whole. I'm concerned with the amounts as far as justifying those salary increases for those. So that's my concern.
Is there,
Specifically 44, 45, and 48.
okay.
So I don't know if we need to separate those, but I don't think you can separate specifics.
Yeah, you can.
Well, we have to,
We've done it in the past.
on 45, and we have to have a principal, there's a principal schedule, right?
Right.
So
Can we do a timeout for just a second? I need to see the personnel schedule.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
You got it. It's not opening up?
Thank you. Can I just? Yeah. All right. I'm sorry. So you're asking about 44?
45 and 48. If those can wait,
Well, actually, wouldn't 45 be?
45, I would,
there are numbers associated with these because they're internal candidates and they're transfers to new positions, right? But the position themselves, it's not an increase in...
Were they already existing positions?
Right, we're not paying, it's not a raise to
No.
the elementary school principal position. It's just because a person who was already within the district, who was getting paid at a lower level, is being transferred into that position.
That's correct.
And that's what the position pays.
That's
with that increase.
already been built in, correct.
Okay, what about 48?
48, now that one is a change. That one is a change.
And 44 is a change. And I'm
It is
just,
a change actually in the other way. It might,
but this says that it's an increase.
it is an increase to that individual specifically, but that job description changed from being a certified administrator to a classified administrator. And so the initial amount actually decreased and saved money for the district. But for the individual, there's
I get it.
there's additional responsibilities.
Right.
Right.
So we need to separate the person from the position.
Correct. And with number 48, that is, we did, we made I'll say it, I made a mistake on the former agenda and submitted the personnel, the job description. And so when I actually had a conversation with Mr. Bartle and said, look, we need to relook at this, and that's why it is on this agenda tonight, because the job description had not been presented correctly to the governing board. Does that make sense, what I just said?
There's a motion on the floor, maybe.
Yeah.
There's a
Call
motion.
the question, in other words.
Yeah, I made the motion to table the reclassification section.
And I second it, so I was calling for the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Roll call, Mr. Irving?
I vote in favor of table. Yes.
Ms. Burnett?
I'm a nay for the table. I want to move forward.
Mrs. Coutray?
Nay.
Mrs. Anderson?
Yes for tabling.
The nays have it, 3-2.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the reclassifications. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Roll call, Mr. Irving.
Nay.
Ms. Burnett?
Aye.
Mrs. Coutray?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson?
Nay.
The ayes have it, 3-2. Thank you, Dr. Conley.
Thank you.
Item B, discussion and possible approval of voucher 1255. This is a client of mine, so I am going to recuse myself again.
Let me see if I can get out of this. Just a minute. Okay, is there a motion to approve voucher 1255?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Approved 4, 1 abstention. Okay, we'll go on to, we're just going to keep going without you.
Carry on.
C.
Item C, discussion and possible approval of vacation buyback for classified staff. Dr. Conley?
We have presented an agenda item for approximately 28 classified staff members. As you know, as we move forward with the delayed payroll system, in order for us to be in complete compliance with what we need to do for our business department, this is one of those mandatory things that we need to do. But when we have situations like this, we always want to be very cognizant of the effect that it has short-term on our families that are already possibly under some economic constraints. Questions about this item?
Just one quick one. We'd have to pay this out no matter what, correct? It's just
That
a
is
matter
correct.
of when we would pay it out.
That is correct, the way it's presented, yes.
All right.
Any
So I have a
motions?
motion to approve the vacation buyback for classified staff.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Anderson, second by Ms. Burdette. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item D, discussion and possible approval of prioritized list of capital projects. Dr. Conley.
At our last meeting, we had a very lengthy discussion about our priority list for our capital projects. It is an action item for, of course, your discussion and final approval. At our last board meeting, and this did not come through with our cover sheet, it says that we recommend all of the capital projects to be approved. This is indeed what was stated, but when we initially had the conversation at our last meeting, it was number 2, our energy enhancement, number 2, energy enhancement, number 4, shade awnings, number 5, shade structures, number 7, the carpeting, and number 8, which is our expanding and renovating our rooms for our life skills program, and with a number 6, if we could get that done in the next 6 months. When we talked last time, it was about what could we do in the next 6 months immediately, and number 1, it was requested that we have presentations of information regarding that project.
So the way it's listed is fine, because even if we approve the whole list, it gives staff the leeway to be able to make the preparations and to get ready for some of those things, even while we have those conversations, while you do the presentation on what hasn't been done.
My preference would be to just approve the things that we know that we can knock out before the end of the year for a couple reasons, one of which is we're not going to be able to spend that money. Why encumber it? Who knows what might come up that we might have a different list of priorities. And next year we will have a different board makeup. So if some of these drag on into beyond this year, which obviously they will, then I think it'd be prudent for us to not make those decisions for the next board.
Well, here's my concern to that. Is these projects have been pushed to the bottom every single time. So regardless of whether there's a new board or not, these projects were on the list clear from '06. So, and the reason they're not done is because they keep being pushed to the bottom by whoever is in administration or the board. So my frustration is, this is how the money was supposed to be used. So why don't we just approve all of it and say, you know what, staff has put a lot of work into this. They've put a lot of time, they've come to a conclusion. Why don't we trust them to go forward with that?
It says nothing about not trusting staff.
Well, they've given us a list, and they've spent a lot of time meeting and saying, here's the priorities.
Great, and we're going to knock out 5 of them,
The whole list
maybe
is here
6.
in the agenda. Why can't we go ahead and approve the whole list as they've given it to us?
We could do that if we have 3 votes. I think that it would be more responsible for us to only approve the things that we're going to pay for and receive the benefit from in the next 6 months.
But this will give staff the authority to be able to move forward on all of them, whether they take 6 months or a year.
We could move forward on any. We don't have to wait to move forward on any of these. Number 3 isn't going to happen until next summer at best. So there's no reason for us to encumber those funds today when we could do it in months from now and still not lose, still not be in a position where we're not going to be able to get the construction project completed next summer.
Could you go through the ones that we can finish in 6 months?
Well,
I understand your logic.
I understand both of their logic.
Numbers 2, 4, 5, 7, and 8, which, again...
Do you have the list there?
Yeah, I got the list right here.
Oh.
Number 2, energy enhancement. Number 4, shade awnings. Number 5, shade structures. Number 7, carpeting. Number 8, expansion, renovation at MES. And assuming that it can get done by the end of the year, number 6, restrooms at the CTE building.
So there's only one item on the list.
But the thing is, 1 through 8 all needs to be done. There's no time limit on here. Go ahead, Dr.
No, it's okay. I just want to put a point of clarification. When, and I'm just reviewing, after reviewing the minutes and after reviewing our conversations from last time, which again were very lengthy, it was my understanding that it was the projects that we could complete within the 6 months that we needed to move forward on. So that is why I presented it the way that I just presented it.
Now, if I may, I understand, President Bartle, you wanting to wait for some of these things that obviously can't be done within the school year, but in my experience, some of these, the restrooms or the outside eating area, there is work that can be done prior to the end of the school. There's documents and drawings, and there's a lot of, what I'm really discovering working with the new church, that there's a lot of background work that can be done before you break that ground and start building, and it would be, and I think in our best interest, if we were able to do that and have that ahead of time, so the minute the school's out, they can start rocking with the construction and have it done before school starts the following year. I'm afraid that if we hold off, that may not happen. And I really believe that at this point that I agree with Mrs. Anderson that we should really just go ahead and approve all these capital projects. This is what the funds are going to be used for. My only question is that in the memo that came across with this, that some of the M&O funds were going to be used for this. Well, maybe I read it wrong, but it said some of the work would come out of our M&O fund. So my understanding was capital comes out of capital and we can't mix.
Well, I guess my question is like on 1 and 3, they're bid items. So I don't know how you could do prep work that's not under bid.
No, but they can start going to bid. If we approve
they can
that
start
list
putting
tonight,
the request for bid. They can start doing that.
They can start
I guess I don't
getting ready.
understand why we can't do what both of you want. Because I understand why encumber and then something huge comes up. I understand that, but it seems like, why can't we have our cake and eat it too? Because again, if you're talking about waiting to put them out for bid, would that satisfy you guys? Because I don't think I can do much prep work if it's...
It was very clear, my understanding is, Mr. Brubaker was very clear that we were not under a time pressure to approve these items that were going to be done next summer, that we don't need to do 10 months of prep work. We've got plenty of time to approve those.
Yeah.
And so the items that we're talking about are numbers 1 and 3. Number 3 is the outside eating area at the high school. $500,000 is a lot of money for us to unnecessarily encumber today when we could do it in the future. Number 1, the ropes course, $250,000, a lot of money, same reason. We also I have a lot of unanswered questions about the ropes course, not the least of which is the fact of what our liability is on that. And there was a directive to the staff to have a presentation in August about the ropes course and give us all the good, bad, and the ugly about it with a PowerPoint and so on and so forth. So I was under the impression that that's where we'll get those questions answered. So if, I don't know if I'm the only one who came up with that idea, but I thought that was the purpose of having a presentation on the ropes course in August.
I feel the presentation is separate from approving. The thing is, if you get the information together and if you go to bid, it could be less. That's just what staff projected. These are all just proposals.
We don't know what the actual cost will be.
So the way it's listed on the sheet is it's just to prepare the bid.
And I'm going to ask a question, Mr. Roush. Just with the approval, if they were to approve all or piecemeal it, would that have being encumbered?
No.
It's not.
If you don't spend the money, you don't spend it.
They're not encumbered until it's finished.
And it's bond money that's specifically set aside for specific projects.
Well, it is encumbered if you put it out for bid.
But if it's not out for bid, it doesn't get spent.
Mr. Roush, will you please clarify this for us?
Yeah.
With a microphone? Microphone, please.
Something's working. Oh.
That one works.
Thank you. Once we present a request for
bid.
To go out and bid, and then the bid is accepted, then it's encumbered.
That's right.
But there is a lot of work.
Right.
In fact, most of our work is in the prep.
So, Mr. Rosh, in order for us to begin construction on the restrooms the day after graduation next year, when do we need to give you guys approval to move forward with that project?
Having an architect here and just, I think probably would need about 8 months at least. It could be sooner. I'm one of those that I know when we develop scopes of work and plans and stuff, there's processes in place, there's permits to be thought about, there's a lot of...
It's a long process.
It's a long process.
Sure, but there are a lot of unknowns here, and I think it'd be very irresponsible for us just to ramrod this through when we could get the facts and figure it out at the next meeting or the next meeting or whatever it is.
Yeah, I guess to me there are two issues. To me, if we passed all of it, then why would we not just put them all out for bid right away? Number one. Number two, if you're talking about the merit of each one, that's a different issue to me. So because to me, if we approve these, then why wouldn't we put them out of bid right away?
We'd move forward with all the projects.
Yeah, I wouldn't have any problem with that.
Staff
but
would.
the merit of it, of each one, that's a little different.
And that's what we talked about last
Okay, yeah, I mean, if these are the ones, then why would you wait to put it out for bid? Why wouldn't you bid it right away?
Okay, I have a question, just hypothetical, because you mentioned the ropes course, and I can kind of see where you're coming from with that, President Bartle. Let's say we approve the entire thing, and then something does come up about the ropes course, there is a liability issue, or there's something that the board decides, you know what, that might not be a good idea, and we don't spend that money. What happens? Can we use that money for something else? That might be another project that they can be allocated to?
Until you approve a contract and a bid.
Okay, so this whole thing could be approved, and if there's certain items on this list that won't move forward because the board decided not to move forward, or whatever the case may be, then other projects could then...
Yes.
The board is deciding to move forward when we vote and approve this to move forward.
Yes.
That's the whole
Why would we vote to move forward if our intent was to, we don't vote, yes, let's do this, and then let's go look at it after we vote? Right? We need to be educated with all the information when we're making our votes.
Right.
I totally understand where you're coming from, but I also see that if we move forward with this, and if, say, something does come up on this list that doesn't seem like it's going to work out 2 or 3 months from now, or wherever.
But you can't do that. For
that's
instance,
my question, yeah.
Okay, let's say we approve it, and let's say
And all the bids are going to go out.
Yeah, and if the bid goes out for the ropes course, and 2 or 3 months later, and so-and-so company accepts a bid for the ropes course, and they accept it, we can't then go back and redo it, they've already accepted the bid.
Well, you still have to approve a request for proposal.
Still have to do an RFQ, still got to do all the...
So why would we put all of our staff and all the vendors through all that effort if we didn't have an intent, or if there's a possibility that that's not what we wanted to do? I don't understand what is the downside of taking a deep breath and waiting on those 2 items until we get all the facts and we know what
Well, for me, because we've been waiting since 2006 to relocate some of this stuff. And so, as a community member, it's very frustrating to know that something was taken out and the money was not spent and pushed to the bottom, again. So, that's just...
Yeah, I support all 8 of these, having involved with the ropes course. We did the ropes course for years, and I'm assuming somebody gave approval. I was involved with it for 4 years. So I'm assuming there's no different liability today than there was in 2005.
But, Mr. Irving, with all due respect, we can't make these decisions based on assumptions. Why don't we get advice from our attorney and from the folks who can tell us for sure? Why don't we make decisions when we know the facts instead of just saying, I like this project, so let's just move forward?
I would accept that compromise, that if you want to do it in those 2, is what you're saying? To get advice? I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to move to executive session for legal advice.
On all 8 or just those?
On this item.
Okay, I have a problem with that.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second.
I have to go. I have to be excused from the meeting.
Okay. There's a motion and a second to adjourn to executive session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
you pause it.
I said, too bad I can't take my computer with me.
Stop it, and then you stop it.
You already stopped it?
Take my laptop.
Yeah, I stopped it. And then when you go back to next,
gonna
just hit record.
Adjourn to executive session pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A3 for legal advice regarding open meeting law, and as well as 38-431.03A1 to consider an employee grievance.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I'll be right there.
No, I gotta go to the restroom. Yes,
It's,
I assume so.
8:20, we are back in open session. Our final item is number 8, adjournment. Is there
So moved.
a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Burnett. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. 8:21.
Okay, what is this responding? Oh, I need to push stop.